George Herbert Walker Bush is an American politician who was the 41st President of the United States from 1989 to 1993 and the 43rd Vice President of the United States from 1981 to 1989. A member of the U.S.Republican Party, he was previously a congressman, ambassador, and Director of Central Intelligence. He is the eldest living former president and vice president. He is also the last living former president who is a veteran of World War II. Bush is often referred to as George H.W. Bush, Bush 41, Bush the Elder, Papa Bush, or George Bush Sr., to distinguish him from his eldest son, George W. Bush, who was the 43rd President of the United States. Prior to his son's presidency, he was known simply as George Bush. President Bush. Bush was born in Milton, Massachusetts, to Prescott Bush and Dorothy Walker Bush. Following the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, Bush postponed college, enlisted in the U.S. Navy on his 18th birthday, and became the youngest aviator in the U.S. Navy at the time. He served until the end of the war, then attended Yale University. Graduating in 1948, he moved his family to West Texas and entered the oil business, becoming a millionaire by the age of 40. He became involved in politics soon after founding his own oil company, serving as a member of the House of Representatives and Director of Central Intelligence, among other positions. He failed to win the Republican nomination for president in 1980, but was chosen by party nominee Ronald Reagan to be his running mate, and the two were elected. During his tenure, Bush headed administration task forces on deregulation and fighting the war on drugs. In 1988, Bush ran a successful campaign to succeed Reagan as president, defeating Democratic opponent Michael Dukakis. Foreign policy drove the Bush presidency. Military operations were conducted in Panama and the Persian Gulf. The Berlin Wall fell in 1989, and the Soviet Union dissolved 2 years later. Domestically, Bush reneged on a 1988 campaign promise and, after a struggle with Congress, signed an increase in taxes that Congress had passed. In the wake of a weak recovery from an economic recession, along with continuing budget deficits and the controversy over his appointment of Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court, he lost the 1992 presidential election to Democrat Bill Clinton. Bush left office in 1993. His presidential library was dedicated in 1997, and he has been active, often alongside Bill Clinton, in various humanitarian activities. Besides being the 43rd president, his son George also served as the 46th governor of Texas and is one of only 2 presidents, the other being John Quincy Adams, to be the son of a former president. His second son, Jeb Bush, served as the 43rd governor of Florida and made an unsuccessful run for president in 2016. Early life and education. George Herbert Walker Bush was born at 173 Adams Street in Milton, Massachusetts, on June 12, 1924 to Prescott Sheldon Bush and Dorothy Bush. The Bush family moved from Milton to Greenwich, Connecticut, shortly after his birth. Bush began his formal education at the Greenwich Country Day School in Greenwich. Beginning in 1936, he attended Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts, where he held a number of leadership positions including president of the senior class, secretary of the student council, president of the community fundraising group, a member of the editorial board of the school newspaper, and captain of both the varsity baseball and soccer teams. World War II. Following the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941, Bush decided to join the U.S. Navy, so after graduating from Phillips Academy in 1942, he became a naval aviator at the age of 18. After completing the 10-month course, he was commissioned as an ensign in the United States Naval Reserve at Naval Air Station Corpus Christi on June 9, 1943, just 3 days before his 19th birthday, which made him the youngest naval aviator to the date. He was assigned to Torpedo Squadron as the photographic officer in September 1943. The following year, his squadron was based on the San Jacinto as a member of Air Group 51, where his lanky physique earned him the nickname Skin. During this time, the task force was victorious in one of the largest air battles of World War II, the Battle of the Philippine Sea. After Bush's promotion to lieutenant on August 1, 1944, the San Jacinto commenced operations against the Japanese in the Bonin Islands. Bush piloted one of 4 Grumman TBM Avenger aircraft from VT-51 that attacked the Japanese installations on Chichijima. His crew for the mission, which occurred on September 2, 1944, included Radioman Second Class John Delaney and Lieutenant Junior Grade William White. During their attack, the Avengers encountered intense anti-aircraft fire. Bush's aircraft was hit by flak and his engine caught on fire. Despite his plane being on fire, Bush completed his attack and released bombs over his target, scoring several damaging hits. With his engine ablaze, Bush flew several miles from the island, where he and one other crew member on the TBM Avenger bailed out of the aircraft. The other man's parachute did not open. Bush waited for 4 hours in an inflated raft, while several fighters circled protectively overhead until he was rescued by the lifeguard submarine US Finback. For the next month he remained on the Finback, and participated in the rescue of other pilots. Several of those shot down during the attack were executed and eaten by the captors. Bush subsequently returned to San Jacinto in November 1944 and participated in operations in the Philippines until his squadron was replaced and sent home to the United States. Through 1944, he flew 58 combat missions for which he received the Distinguished Flying Cross, 3 Air Medals, and a Presidential Unit Citation awarded to San Jacinto. Because of his valuable combat experience, Bush was reassigned to Norfolk Navy Base and put in a training wing for new torpedo pilots. He was later assigned as a naval aviator in a new torpedo squadron, VT-153, based at Naval Air Station Grosse Ile, Michigan. Upon the Japanese surrender in 1945, Bush was honorably discharged in September of that year. Marriage and college years. George Bush married Barbara Pierce on January 6, 1945, only weeks after his return from the Pacific. The couple's first residence was a small rented apartment in Trenton, Michigan, near Bush's Navy assignment at NAS Grosse Ile. The marriage produced 6 children: George Walker Bush, Pauline Robinson, Robin Bush, John Ellis, Jeb Bush, Neil Mallon Pierce Bush, Marvin Pierce Bush, and Dorothy Bush Koch. Bush had been accepted to Yale University prior to his enlistment in the military, and took up the offer after his discharge and marriage. While at Yale, he was enrolled in an accelerated program that allowed him to graduate in 2.5 years, rather than 4. He was a member of the Delta Kappa Epsilon fraternity, and was elected its president. He also captained the Yale baseball team, and as a left-handed first baseman, played in the first 2 College World Series. As the team captain, Bush met Babe Ruth before a game during his senior year. He was also, like his father, a member of the Yale cheerleading squad. Late in his junior year he was, like his father Prescott Bush, initiated into the Skull and Bones Secret Society. He graduated as a member of the Phi Beta Kappa from Yale in 1948 with a Bachelor of Arts degree in economics. business career. After graduating from Yale, Bush moved his young family to West Texas. His father's business connections proved useful as he ventured into the oil business, starting as a sales clerk with Dresser Industries, a subsidiary of Brown Brothers Harriman. While working for Dresser, Bush lived in various places with his family: Odessa, Texas; Ventura, Bakersfield and Compton, California; and Midland, Texas. Bush started the Bush-Overby Oil Development Company in 1951 and in 1953 co-founded the Zapata Petroleum Corporation, an oil company that drilled in the Permian Basin in Texas. In 1954 he was named president of the Zapata Offshore Company, U.S. subsidiary which specialized in offshore drilling. In 1959, shortly after the subsidiary became independent, Bush moved the company and his family from Midland to Houston. He continued serving as president of the company until 1964, and later chairman until 1966, but his ambitions turned political. By that time, Bush had become a millionaire. According to Time.com, Bush had a net worth of $20 million in 2015. Political career 1964 to 80. Bush served as chairman of the Republican Party for Harris County, Texas in 1964, but wanted to be more involved in policy making, so he set his sights high. He aimed for a U.S. Senate seat from Texas. After winning the Republican primary, Bush faced his opponent, incumbent Democrat Ralph W. Yarborough, who attacked Bush as a right-wing extremist. Bush was a strong supporter of Republican Senator Barry Goldwater, who headed the Republican ticket as the presidential candidate. Like Goldwater, Bush strongly opposed civil rights legislation in the name of states' rights. Yarborough, a leading Texas liberal, supported the civil rights legislation and was re-elected by 56% to 44%. The Republican candidate for governor, Jack Creighton of Dallas, who often campaigned alongside Bush before the election, lost by a much wider margin to Governor John B. Connally, Jr. Bush and the Harris County Republicans played a role in the development of the new Republican Party of the late 20th century. First, Bush worked to absorb the John Birch Society members, who were trying to take over the Republican Party. Second, during and after the Civil Rights Movement, Democrats in the South who were committed to segregation left the party, and although the Country Club Republicans had differing ideological beliefs, they found common ground in hoping to expel the Democrats from power. Bush was elected in 1966 to a House of Representatives seat from the 7th District of Texas, defeating with 57% of the ballots cast the Democrat Frank Briscoe, the district attorney of Harris County, known for his law and order credentials and a cousin of later Governor Dolph Briscoe. Bush was the first Republican to represent Houston in the U.S. House. Bush's representative district included Tanglewood, the Houston neighborhood that was his residence. His family had moved into Tanglewood in the 1960s. His voting record in the House was generally conservative. Bush voted for the Civil Rights Act of 1968, although it was generally unpopular in his district. He supported the Nixon administration's Vietnam policies, but broke with Republicans on the issue of birth control, which he supported. Despite being a first-term congressman, Bush was appointed to the powerful House Ways and Means Committee, where he voted to abolish the military draft. He was elected to a second term in 1968. In 1970, Nixon convinced Bush to relinquish his House seat to run for the Senate against Ralph Yarborough, a fierce Nixon critic. In the Republican primary, Bush easily defeated conservative Robert J. Morris by a margin of 87.6% to 12.4%. Nixon came to Texas to campaign in Longview for Bush and gubernatorial gubernatorial candidate Paul Eggers, a Dallas lawyer who was a close friend of U.S. Senator John G. Tower, former Congressman Lloyd Bentsen, a more moderate Democrat and native of Mission in South Texas, defeated Yarborough in the Democratic primary. Yarborough endorsed Bentsen, who defeated Bush 53.4 to 46.6%. As Bush's political career waned, he moved out of Houston and sold his first Tanglewood house, but for periods of time continued to reside in Tanglewood. Ambassador to the United Nations following his 1970 loss, Bush was well known as a prominent Republican businessman from the Sun Belt, a group of states in the southern part of the country. Nixon noticed and appreciated the sacrifice Bush had made of his congressional position, so he appointed him ambassador to the United Nations. He was confirmed unanimously by the Senate, and served for 2 years, beginning in 1971. Chairman of the Republican National Committee. Amidst the Watergate scandal, Nixon asked Bush to become chairman of the Republican National Committee in 1973. Bush accepted, and held this position when the popularity of both Nixon and the Republican Party plummeted. He defended Nixon steadfastly, but later, as Nixon's complicity became clear, Bush focused more on defending the Republican Party, while still maintaining loyalty to Nixon. As chairman, Bush formally requested that Nixon eventually resign for the good of the Republican Party. Nixon did this on August 9, 1974. Bush noted in his diary that there was an aura of sadness, like somebody died. The speech was vintage Nixon, a caricature at the press, enormous strains. One couldn't help but look at the family and the whole thing and think of his accomplishments and then think of the shame. Indeed, a new spirit, a new lift. Envoy to China, 1974-75. Gerald Ford, Nixon's successor, appointed Bush to be chief of the U.S. liaison office in the People's Republic of China. Since the United States at the time maintained official relations with the Republic of China on Taiwan and not the People's Republic of China, the liaison office did not have the official status of an embassy, and Bush did not formally hold the position of ambassador, though he unofficially acted as one. The 14 months that he spent in China were largely seen as beneficial for U.S.-China relations. After Ford's accession to the presidency, Bush was under serious consideration for being nominated as vice president. Ford eventually narrowed his list to Nelson Rockefeller and Bush. White House Chief of Staff Donald Rumsfeld reportedly preferred Rockefeller over Bush. Rockefeller was finally named and confirmed. Bush was again passed over for the vice presidency by Ford when the president chose Bush's future presidential rival, Senator Bob Dole, to replace Rockefeller on the 1976 presidential ticket. Director of Central Intelligence in 1976, Ford brought Bush back to Washington to become Director of Central Intelligence, replacing William Colby. He served in this role for 357 days, from January 30, 1976, to January 20, 1977. The CIA had been rocked by a series of revelations, including those based on investigations by the Church Committee regarding illegal and unauthorized activities by the CIA, and Bush was credited with helping to restore the agency morale. In his capacity as DCI, Bush gave national security briefings to Jimmy Carter both as a presidential candidate and as president-elect, and discussed the possibility of remaining in that position in a Carter administration, but did not do so. He was succeeded by Deputy Director of Central Intelligence.He, Henry Notche, who served as acting Director of Central Intelligence until Stansfield Turner was confirmed. After a Democratic administration took power in 1977, Bush became chairman on the executive committee of the First International Bank in Houston. He later spent a year as a part-time professor of administrative science at Rice University's Jones School of Business beginning in 1978. The year it opened, Bush said of his time there, "I loved my brief time in the world of academia." Between 1977 and 1979, he was the director of the Council on Foreign Relations Foreign Policy Organization. 1980 presidential campaign. Bush had decided in the late 1970s that he was going to run for president in 1980. In 1979, he attended 850 political events and traveled more than 250,000 miles to campaign for the nation's highest office. In the contest for the Republican Party nomination, Bush stressed his wide range of government experience, while competing against rivals Senator Howard Baker of Tennessee, Senator Bob Dole of Kansas, Congressman John Anderson of Illinois, Congressman Phil Crane, also of Illinois, former Governor John Connally of Texas, former Minnesota Governor Harold Stassen, and the frontrunner Ronald Reagan, a former actor and governor of California. In the primary election, Bush focused almost entirely on the Iowa caucuses, while Reagan ran a more traditional campaign. Bush represented the centrist wing in the GOP, whereas Reagan represented conservatives. Bush famously labeled Reagan's supply-side-influenced plans for massive tax cuts voodoo economics. His strategy proved useful to some degree, as he won in Iowa with 31.5% to Reagan's 29.4%. After the win, Bush stated that his campaign was full of momentum, or Big Mo. As a result of the loss, Reagan replaced his campaign manager, reorganized his staff, and concentrated on the New Hampshire primary. The two men agreed to a debate in the state, organized by the Nashua Telegraph but paid for by the Reagan campaign. Reagan invited the other four candidates as well, but Bush refused to debate them, and eventually they left. The debate proved to be a pivotal moment in the campaign, when the moderator, John Breen, ordered Reagan's microphone turned off. His angry response, "I am paying for this microphone," struck a chord with the public. Bush ended up losing New Hampshire's primary with 23% to Reagan's 50%. Bush lost most of the remaining primaries as well, and formally dropped out of the race in May of that year. With his political future seeming dismal, Bush sold his house in Houston and bought his grandfather's estate in Kennebunkport, Maine, known as Walker's Point. At the Republican convention, Reagan selected Bush as his vice presidential nominee, placing him on the winning Republican presidential ticket of 1980.